It happens in the quietest moments. You lean over the crib, and your baby is staring at you with those wide, searching eyes. Their mouth slowly opens, not into a cry, not into a yawn, just open, as if something is about to come out, as if they are trying to say something, but the words haven't been invented yet. And if you've seen it, you know how strangely powerful it feels. Because for 1 second, it doesn't look random at all. It looks intentional. It looks like a message, like your baby is standing right on the edge of communication and reaching for you with the only tools they have. Most parents notice this and wonder the same thing. Are they hungry? Are they confused? Are they trying to copy me? Are they about to cry? Or is this just one of those weird baby things everyone tells you not to overthink? But what makes this moment so fascinating is that the common explanations only tell part of the story. Because when babies open their mouths like they want to say something, it can absolutely be about hunger. Sometimes it can be about comfort. Sometimes it can be part of early sound making. And sometimes it may be one of the earliest social signals you'll ever see. In other words, that tiny mouth opening may not be speech, but it also may not be meaningless. And once you understand what babies actually use their mouths for in the first months of life, this behavior starts to look much less random and much more like the beginning of human communication. But to see that clearly, we first have to start with the explanation almost everyone gives, and why it's not wrong, just incomplete. The most common answer is simple. Your baby opens their mouth because they're hungry. And to be fair, that explanation exists for a reason. In the early months, babies are built to search for food. Newborns have a rooting reflex, which means when the area around the mouth or cheek is touched, they may turn their head and open their mouth to look for the breast or bottle. Pediatric guidance also lists mouth opening, licking lips, turning the head, moving the jaw, and bringing hands to the mouth as early hunger cues. In fact, crying is often considered a later cue, not the first one. So yes, sometimes your baby really is saying, in the clearest way they can, "I'm ready to feed." But here's where parents get tripped up. If every mouth opening meant hunger, babies would be far easier to read than they actually are. Because babies also open their mouths when they're curious, when they're studying your face, when they're preparing to make a sound, when they're getting overstimulated, when they're trying to organize their body, when they want contact, and sometimes when they're simply moving through one state into another. That's why so many parents feel confused. They respond like it's always a feeding cue, and sometimes it is. But other times, the baby wasn't asking for milk. They were asking for connection, regulation, or just a moment to process what they were seeing. This is the part that changes everything. Babies don't communicate in isolated signals. They communicate in patterns. A mouth that opens together with head turning, lip licking, and hand-to-mouth movements means something very different from a mouth that opens during eye contact, stillness, or soft cooing. So the real question is not, why did my baby open their mouth? The real question is, what was happening around that moment? And once you start looking at the mouth as more than a feeding tool, you begin to see the deeper role it plays in a baby's inner world. For a very young baby, the mouth is not just for eating. It is one of their first major instruments for learning, regulating, and connecting. Before babies can point, crawl toward you, or form words, the mouth does an incredible amount of work. It helps them search. It helps them soothe. It helps them prepare to vocalize. It helps them explore sensation. And because the nervous system is still so immature, the mouth often becomes one of the earliest places where intention shows up on the outside. That's why this behavior can feel so emotionally loaded to parents. You're not imagining it. The mouth really is one of the earliest windows into what your baby is trying to do. Sometimes your baby opens their mouth because they are organizing for action. Think of it like the body getting ready. Just as adults part their lips before speaking, singing, or reacting, babies also make preparatory movements before a sound, before a feed, or before a social response. The movement itself can be a kind of pre-communication. And that matters because early communication does not begin with words. It begins with rhythms, with faces, with pauses, with tiny repeated movements that slowly become meaningful through interaction. Pediatric experts often describe babies as having conversations long before speech. Not full conversations, of course, but back and forth exchanges through facial expressions, cries, body movements, eye contact, coos, and pauses. In that world, the mouth becomes part of the conversation long before language arrives. So when your baby opens their mouth while staring at you, they may not be trying to talk in the way adults mean it, but they may be doing something just as important. They may be preparing to engage. And once you see that, the next layer gets even more fascinating, because some mouth openings seem less about reflex and more about social attention itself.
This is where the behavior starts to feel almost eerie in the best way. Because babies are not just little bodies reacting to hunger and discomfort. They are also deeply social humans from the very beginning. Research on newborn and young infant behavior suggests that babies are highly tuned to faces, voices, and interactive moments. Some studies have found that newborns produce more mouth movements when looking at a talking face than a silent one. That doesn't mean every mouth opening is a social message, and the research in this area should be interpreted carefully. But it does point to something important. Babies may use mouth movements as part of their earliest response to human communication. In plain English, when you talk to your baby and they open their mouth back at you, it may be more than coincidence. They may be responding to the social energy of the moment, not because they understand words, but because they are already participating in the structure of interaction. They see your face move. They hear rhythm in your voice. They feel your attention land on them. And their body answers with one of the only tools available: eyes, hands, breath, and mouth. This is one reason babies often seem like they are trying to say something before they can actually make clear sounds. In a way, they are. They are practicing the choreography of communication before mastering the language. And there's another twist parents often miss. Sometimes the mouth opens not because a baby is overstimulated by too much sensation, but because they are intensely focused, deeply engaged, studying you, preparing a response. It can look like surprise or wonder or effort, and sometimes it's all three at once. That's why context matters so much. A baby opening their mouth while turning toward your voice, holding your gaze, softening their body, or making small sounds is very different from a baby opening their mouth while escalating into distress. One is often a sign of engagement. The other may be a signal that their system is tipping. And that difference is exactly what parents need to understand next. So what does this actually mean for you in real life? At 2 a.m., in the living room, during a diaper change, or while you're leaning over the bassinet trying to decode one tiny face. It means don't rush to assign one fixed meaning to the behavior. Instead, read the cluster. If your baby opens their mouth while turning their head, rooting, licking lips, or bringing hands to their mouth, hunger is a strong possibility. If they open their mouth while watching your face, pausing, making soft sounds, or lighting up when you talk, you may be seeing early social engagement. If they open their mouth with fussing, squirming, facial tension, or building agitation, they may be getting dysregulated and need help settling before the moment gets bigger. That one shift alone can make parents feel so much calmer, because suddenly the goal is not to mind read perfectly. The goal is to notice the pattern your baby is building. And there's something reassuring about that. You do not need to decode every signal instantly. You just need to stay curious long enough to see what usually comes next. This is also where one gentle caution matters. If mouth opening comes with signs that feel physically off, like persistent breathing struggle, retractions around the ribs, bluish color, poor feeding, unusual floppiness, or your baby seeming hard to rouse, that stops being a communication question and becomes a call to your pediatrician or urgent medical care. Not because the behavior itself is alarming, but because context always matters more than any single cue. For most babies, though, this moment is not a red flag. It is a clue that your baby is not passive, not blank, not just randomly moving through the day. They are constantly sending small signals about need, interest, effort, and state. And once you stop asking, what's wrong, and start asking, what are they trying to do here, everything begins to look different.
So why do babies open their mouth like they want to say something? Because sometimes, in the earliest form available to them, they do. Not with words, not with intention the way adults understand intention, but with a developing body that is already trying to connect inner experience to outer expression. Sometimes it means hunger. Sometimes it means readiness. Sometimes it means sensory exploration. Sometimes it means, I feel you there. I hear your voice. I'm engaged, and my body is trying to answer back. And maybe that's why this moment hits parents so deeply. Because hidden inside that tiny mouth opening is a truth most people don't tell you enough. Communication starts long before speech, long before first words, long before mama or dada. It starts in looks, pauses, facial shifts, hand movements, body tension. And yes, in those strange little moments when your baby seems to open their mouth at the edge of a thought. So if you've ever looked at your baby and thought, wait, were you trying to tell me something? You were asking a better question than you realized. Because the answer is often yes, just not in the language you expected. And the beautiful part is, you do not have to decode it perfectly to be a good parent. You just have to keep noticing, keep responding, keep learning your baby's patterns one moment at a time. That is how understanding grows. That is how confidence grows. And that is how a baby who cannot speak yet still ends up feeling deeply heard. If this changed the way you see your baby's little signals, stay with this. Because one of the most misunderstood cues of all is what it means when a baby suddenly looks away, right in the middle of interaction. And that one surprises almost every parent.